Hi, I'm Travis Whitaker, and welcome to Living Recovery. My special guest today is Janice Cook. Thank you so much for joining me. I
Thank you for
appreciate it.
having me.
I wanted to create this show to share what it's like to be an addict for families, to deal with addicts, and what it's also like to be in recovery. It's been a journey of mine for over 20 years. I grew up with a family of addiction. I've been surrounded by it for 49 years. My own personal journey was 12 years, and I've been in recovery for a little over 11 and a half years. It affected my wife, my friends, my kids, everybody around me. And now, in recovery, I want to share the miracle of what is on the other side of addiction,
Yeah,
right? And
yeah,
that's the beautiful thing of recovery and getting your relationships back. And there's a lot of hard work that's involved in that process. And by having some guests come on and share their journey with us, we want to connect with people who might be struggling, whether it's the addict struggling or the family, to know how to reach out and know that you're not alone out there. So appreciate you again for joining me.
yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So let's talk about your addiction. Like, when did it
Okay.
start and who did it affect, and what that looked like?
Well, for me, I like to start telling my story by saying I was born into chaos.
Yep.
I nearly died at birth, and I have a twin sister. And so, um, one of my core issues inside is feeling like I'm not enough or that
Yep.
I don't matter. And I've tried to figure out over the years, where did that start? I don't really even remember. But um, when I think back to when I was younger, so when I was born, my head was all misshapen. And so I was not a cute baby. And one of my siblings, she's 10 years older than my twin and I, would remind me of that often, that I was not a cute baby and that my twin sister was the pretty baby.
And at what age do you remember that
Um,
from your older sibling?
I don't really know if I have an age. I just
Hmm.
know that it was always, I always felt like I was the ugly twin. And that I was the bad twin and that
Yeah.
that kind of thing. And so, told myself stories since I was very young. And, so going through my life, every chance that I felt like I wasn't enough, it was just another check. Yep. Proof this is me, Janice. I'm not enough.
Like, anytime you might have failed at something,
Yeah.
even though it's a learning experience, if it didn't go the way you wanted to, it's kind of like the check mark,
Yep,
right?
exactly.
Yeah.
Like my grades weren't as good as my siblings, and
Yeah.
I grew up in a really large LDS family, and so kind of getting lost in the mix of all these kids, and um, often comparing myself, and so it was always, I pretty much always ended with Janice not being good enough,
Yeah.
or that I don't matter, and so pretty much always, I still struggle with that today, actually, but
Well, just so you know, you're not the only one, right? We,
whew,
we it's something we have to work on every day,
yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah, I know that, but
When I was in treatment, I was assigned to do 120 I love yous every morning in the mirror and every night in the mirror. And my roommate had to listen to me so we could check it off.
120.
Yes.
Oh my word. I
Yeah.
think the first time that I went to treatment, my therapist had me do that every day, but it wasn't 120.
Yeah.
That's a lot. Maybe I should do that today. But so as a teenager, in a large family with a twin, just trying to figure out who I am, being raised in the predominant religion in our area, trying to figure out where I fit, but knowing I felt different than like what I was being taught and what my siblings and my parents believed, and so that was a struggle because I felt like I had to live that way. I had to be that person that they expected me to be. And then I got married at the age of 20, typical LDS, young, 20 years old and getting married. And so I never lived on my own.
Oh, okay.
I never lived on my own. And my marriage was okay. It was difficult. We ended up being married for 20 years, but a lot of issues there, and not necessarily because of my alcoholism, but just communication issues and personality issues and things like that. But we have 2 daughters. I have a 19-year-old and a 15-year-old. She'll be 15 next week. My little mini me, she's so freaking cute.
Isn't that fun?
Yeah, it's so fun. And then they're in my life today. Like last night, my youngest, Morgan, she called me and wanted to tell me about this job that she's getting. And I love it. I love that my kids want me to be involved in that information and that part of their lives. It feels awesome. I love it. Yeah.
But it's hard work. We have to earn it.
Oh, because
I'm
not easy.
I'm the type of person that I know I mess up, right? I'm going to go up to you and say, let's hug it out. Mm-hmm. Let's move on. Uh-huh. But not everybody reacts like that. Yeah. And I have to learn in my own recovery, it's not always about me. Right. It's not always about what I want right when I want it. So that was one of the big lessons that I continue to work on.
Right. That's so true. I'm very similar to that. Like I'm like, well, I'm changing. I'm doing all this stuff. I feel better. So we should be good now, right? Like we're good. And I forget that they have their own healing to do as well. But in my marriage, we moved to Kentucky for 5 years. And so I believe I've struggled with depression since I was a teenager. And we don't need to go into the details of that and kind of what triggered it and, the traumas in my life. But I always struggled with depression, and I was probably 26 the first time that I started taking medication for my depression and anxiety. And I drank on and off through, from 15, that was my first drink. I went with my friend Lori across the street to the church lawn and drank beer and ended up puking like half a can through the beer, And that was my first drink ever. And then it was always just recreational. It was just fun. Yeah. And then even after getting married, recreational drinking, but a lot of shame there because of the religion I grew up in. It was not acceptable, to be in good standings. And
the drinking becomes like a coping mechanism for us not knowing how to deal with that underlying issue, right? Because it's like, I always knew that there was something wrong. I didn't know what was wrong, and I didn't feel good about myself. But when I used drugs, I felt really good about myself for a little bit, right? That's kind of what it does. So. Yeah,
exactly. So the drinking for me became a problem 10 years ago. It was 2010, and we were in Kentucky, and I stopped. I think I ran out of my depression medication, and so I was like, well, I'll just drink and it'll make me feel better. But we all know that's a depressant, and so of course that didn't help. And so very quickly, pretty much overnight, I knew I was an alcoholic. Yeah. I was like, I can't stop. I'm drinking all the time, and it runs in my family. And so I knew that I had a problem, but it took me a long time before I ever went to treatment and got help for it. And then I just drank on and off through the years, and mostly had binges, tried to stay sober for the man I was married to and my kids, but you can't do it for anyone else but yourself. So I learned that the hard way.
Yeah. Okay, so we're going to take a quick break, and we'll be right back.
I am a business owner.
I am a mother, a doctor.
I am a student athlete.
A lawyer.
I'm a police officer.
I'm your neighbor.
I needed meth.
Opioids.
I needed coke.
I needed alcohol.
I needed opioids.
I needed heroin.
I needed help.
Maple Mountain Recovery is here to help you with your healing and recovery. Call 801-499-9316 or visit us online at maplemountainrecovery.com. Hi, welcome back to Living Recovery. I want to thank our sponsors, Living Recovery Interventions and Maple Mountain Recovery. All right, Janice, thank you again so much for joining me.
You're welcome.
All right, so, you're married for 20 years, 2 daughters, talking about the antidepressants you were taking, and then you're running out and kind of drinking to kind of fill that void. What else kind of took place?
Well, definitely my relationship with my husband at the time, I was just destroying it continually every time I would relapse and drink and lie. And then of course with my daughters. And at one point I was at a treatment center, and they did like a family night, and my daughters and I did the Ring of Fire, or I don't know what you would want to call it, but we sat in the middle, and my girls got to tell me how my addiction affected them, and it was probably one of the hardest things I've ever done, but also healing for me and them as well. But I was shocked at some of the stuff they remembered from when they were like, a lot younger.
So so you said the first time you did treatment. So how old were they at that time?
It's 17 and 12.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And they wanted to do that for them.
Yeah.
And I was like, I don't want to sit in the middle and, go through this, but it ended up being awesome.
Yeah.
So definitely affected my daughters more than I ever realized until that day. And still does today. But we're working on it and things are getting better.
It's a process.
Yeah. Oh,
It
definitely.
just takes time, and you just have to be there and support them, and I love it.
Yeah. And I've told myself for years that my addiction didn't affect anyone but myself and my husband and my daughters, because I was a closet drinker because of the religion I grew up in. I would literally like hide in the closet and drink and then go about my life. And Relief Society president at one point in my church, and I was sober at that time, but hid it all the time. I was very ashamed of my addiction. So that made it harder, that I felt like I had to keep it all a secret and keep it inside. But so when I did go to treatment the first time and I started to learn what the recovery community was all about, and going to AA and NA, and really submerging my life, like putting my life in it and making it my life, I was able to let go of that shame and be able to I guess accept it. And today I am grateful for my addiction because of the people it's brought into my life and the experiences I've gained because of my addiction. But I never thought I'd ever be able to say that,
One of my therapists, and I remember this saying to this day when I was in treatment, he's like, you don't have to forget the past, but you can remember it with less pain.
Yeah.
And
I like that.
That is something that's always been in my mind. Like, I know the damage that I did. I know what addiction, the horrible side that it brings to our children. And it's all about us during that time of the addiction. And we do cause a lot of pain.
Yeah.
But, I also believe that, when we get well and we're taking care of ourselves, then we help get the children well. We help repair those relationships. Now, there's no exact time of when that should look like as far as when the other person should come around. It might be 5 years, it might be 3 months.
Right.
But you just got to keep putting that foot forward and just keep doing the next right thing.
Right. I agree with that totally. I just didn't realize that how many people in my life I was affecting, from nieces and nephews to my own siblings, because I didn't drink in front of them or they never saw me drunk. And so how is it affecting them? But what I've learned over the years, and with a lot of help, is that they have emotions as well, and that they love me. And so when they know I'm struggling and going through things, that affects them and their emotions. And so definitely have affected far more people than I realized in my addiction. So.
Well, and when we're not well, for myself anyways, I was physically there, but I wasn't mentally there, and I didn't go to their games, and I was either, dope sick, or there was an excuse and I didn't feel well because I wasn't well. Yeah. So there's a lot of, trauma and abandonment issues that they had, that dad's not there, even though dad's there.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. So, I would show up to my kids' cheer competitions and basketball games, drunk, and that's something that I have to accept today. Like, I have to accept it, that it happened, but that they know I'm sorry, they know I'm working on me, and but that is a little bit of PTSD for them when they have a function or something. They're like very nervous about inviting me to things, but it's getting better.
I would get there like 20 minutes early. 30 minutes early. Just to make sure. And I made sure that I would like block out a period of time with work or whatnot, so I was not late. Because for so many years, my word just didn't mean anything, right? It just, it was like, oh, whatever, dad's gonna, do this. So when I say I'm gonna be there, I'd get, really? Oh, really? I'm like, and you gotta be careful with the word promise.
Oh, I know.
When you say
struggle
promise,
with that one too. And I've always been a people pleaser. I'm very like codependent in a lot of my relationships, and so learning to say no and not making empty promises has been another huge part in my journey. And and in early recovery, I would sit my kids down and go, there's going to be times I'm going to disappoint you, but I'm going to do the best to make sure
that addiction doesn't cause any of that.
Yeah.
You know, I might get stuck at work late one day, but you know what? I'm going to show up. I'm going to be part of your lives, and you know, we're going to find a way, because I don't want them to continue the path that I did. Right.
Yeah. Right.
There's that passed down trauma.
Yep.
So I'm very, you know, as the family as a whole is so important to kind of, you know, stop that. Now's the time, because then, you know, I'm getting older now. I'm going to have grandkids someday.
Yeah.
I don't want that cycle to continue.
Yeah, I agree with that
Yeah.
fully. So I mentioned earlier that the alcoholism runs in my family, and that was my my mom's mom was an awful alcoholic, and so my mom has never had a drop of alcohol in her life, and I remind my daughters often, you know, you guys, this is real. Like, you've
Yes.
seen what it's done to me, and you've heard the stories from my grandmother and like my mom being raised by a raging alcoholic, and like, this is a big deal. Like, you probably don't ever want to take that first drink and just try it, you know, because it's probably gonna go downhill really fast. And so I get to be honest with them about that today, and like, they're pretty honest with me, actually. I'm surprised how much they want to share with me.
Yeah.
And
We were like, well,
I love
okay,
it.
too much.
Sometimes I'm like, what? Okay, wait, you don't need to tell me about that.
Yeah.
But I love it.
Well, and you know, also it took me time in recovery to also learn that they have their own path, and they have their own mistakes they got to make, and they've got their own journey.
Yep.
All I can do is share my journey with them and make sure they're very aware. So when my kids, my youngest is 16, 25, and 21, or my son and my daughter. So when they were in school, everybody knew who their dad was. The whole neighborhood knew who their dad was, right? So they had to go through that too, and that's not always the easiest. But what I did is, when I got well, I went and I was an assistant coach for the high school basketball team.
Awesome. Yeah.
I showed up to events. I spoke at schools.
Yep.
I shared my experiences to help them kind of alleviate that, oh, your dad's a drug addict. Because there's, you know, they don't understand how all that works. So I was part of that whole, like, school community, and talking to the police officers and sharing and, you know, doing all that. So, all right, we're going to take one more break, and we'll be right back.
I am a business owner,
I am a mother, a doctor.
I am a student athlete.
a lawyer.
I'm a police officer.
I'm your neighbor.
I needed meth.
Opioids.
I needed coke.
I needed alcohol.
I needed opioids.
I needed heroin.
I needed help.
Maple Mountain Recovery is here to help you with your healing and recovery. Call 801-499-9316 or visit us online at maplemountainrecovery.com. Welcome back to Living Recovery. I'm Travis, and this is Janice, my special guest. So again, thank you so much for joining me and sharing part of your journey. So the first part, we talked about the addiction and what it does and what it does to the family. And now I want to talk about the beautiful part of recovery.
Yes.
The
let's
gifts
do it.
of recovery.
Okay.
So when you went into treatment, what was one of the first gifts that you saw that you received?
Man, I could come up with a lot, but the very first thing that came to my mind was the first time that I was at Steps down in Payson. My daughters came to visit me one Sunday night, and I think I was about to graduate. And my oldest daughter, Taylor, looked at me and she was like, "Mom, the light is back in your eyes." And so for your own child to notice that and to see that and to feel it, that was probably one of the best gifts that I could have received before leaving that treatment center at that time. But really just having my kids in my life and being able to, I'm a big runner. And so being able to run and focus on my running. At one point I had about a year sober, and about 2012. And I started running ultra marathons as well. And that was...
How far is that?
Anything over 26.2 miles is an ultra. But I got to the point where I started running 100 milers, and
100 milers.
Yeah. And so during this about 4.5, 5 years of sobriety, that I was able to, now I say I was sober, but I wasn't in recovery, because I didn't I didn't do anything but run to keep
Right.
myself sober. But it became a new addiction for me and an obsession, and my body actually started to shut down. And so then when I could no longer run the way I wanted to, that is when I relapsed. And so learning now today that it takes so much more than just one thing, and that I don't do anything in moderation. Like it's like all or nothing. So learning that I've got to balance everything in my life, my running, my hiking, my kids. I'm in school now and work and
Go
I
big
have
or
to
go home.
Yeah. Like, I mean, I've just always been like 100 miles, like, sure, I'll do it. You
If
know, that
one's
sounds
great-
drastic. I'll do it.
That's the addict part. One's great.
Yeah.
30's even better.
Exactly. Like I've run 47 marathons and same kind of thing. I'm
Oh,
like, one marathon's not enough. I've got to run as many as I can.
Yeah.
And so for me, addiction is not just alcoholism for me. It's in a lot of areas in my life. And so I have to be careful with that. But being able to run again and enjoy it and want to run, because when I'm in active addiction, running is one of the first things that I give up in my life. And so I've got to, knowing that and being aware of that, it's, that's a gift too.
So you're talking about, this is something I think even 11 and a half years sober, we talk about balance. We talk about work life. We talk about family. We talk about friends. We talk about, taking care of yourself. How are you finding what's working for you right now?
Right now, I'm so busy in my schedule. My new life is pretty crazy. I'm no longer married, but and I'm newly single from somebody that I was dating for quite a while. And so I'm like, oh, what do I do with all this free time, right? But I work in recovery. I work at a treatment center, and I love it. I love being able to help others and give back and then share my experiences with them. And let's see. Yeah, just I go to meetings when I can.
Yeah.
Not so much lately since COVID.
It's different. A lot of
different.
online or a
Yeah.
lot of Zoom.
I miss it though. I
Yeah.
really do. I miss it a lot.
Well, we're huggers.
Yeah.
It's like,
I
that's
know.
what we do. It's like, get in here.
I know, but because
There's
it's all
that-
about that connection. And
that-
for me, I'm a hugger,
and
and that's
it's-
part of what helps me
Yep.
feel loved and how I show love to those around me. So
Connection's the opposite of addiction.
Exactly.
I truly believe that, because when we're in our addiction, it's like we want to just isolate.
Yep.
We get into recovery, it's like we become family.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, I can connect with you. I've never met you,
Right.
but through our journeys
Right.
and sitting here talking,
Yeah.
we connect because we've had the same kind of path.
Right.
Getting our kids back,
Yeah.
getting a job you love. What else do you like to do? What are some other things in recovery that the gifts that have been brought to you?
Well, I've struggled with reading ever since my alcoholism started 10 years ago. I used to read all the time, and then my brain kind of changed, and so I've struggled being able to sit down and read, and I'm starting to find that love for reading again, and so I can kind of focus now on a book, which is nice. That sounds weird, but it's nice to be able to sit down and like focus on what's in front of me. So at one point through this journey, the last few years, my relationship with my twin sister went south. And so now being able to communicate with her as often as she will let me, we're building that relationship back up. And so I'm really grateful for that because she wants to communicate with me. She wants to share things with me. And
It's funny how that works too.
Yeah.
Because like I had talked about earlier, when we get sober, we want all these people in our lives, right?
Yeah.
But they're not ready. Now you've probably
Yep.
just sat back, wait, and then she's come to you as she's seeing you do better and better, better things, right?
Yeah, my therapist tells me all the time. Like months ago, I was in there crying about my relationship with my twin sister because I wanted it to be what it used to be.
Right.
And he was like, well, first of all, it's never going to be what it used to be. It's going to be something new, and it can be even better. But he was like, mark my words, there's going to be a day not too long from now, and she's going to be in your life daily, and it's going to be what you want and need it to be. So it's still not quite there. She's moved out of the state of Utah now, so it's not as much as I want it to be, but yeah, she will call me and we communicate and feel grateful for that. I'm really grateful for that.
This is the best part of the show for me is talking about kind of the gifts,
Mhm.
right? Early in my recovery, I think the first year, I was turned down for 22 jobs because I had a criminal record, right? I had drug charges. But I kept on that path, right? I just kept doing the next right thing. And so that's when I talk about there's some people when they get sober 6 months, they might have a great job and a great apartment and things fall into place quicker for them.
Right.
First few years in my sobriety, after I was coaching my son, my wife and I split up because we weren't connecting in recovery.
Yeah.
We weren't both coming together, and he didn't have anything to do with me. And that was really difficult. And I would text him and he wouldn't respond, or I'd get the 3 a.m. text, wanted nothing to do with me and chewing me out. And, for a lot of people that might be going through that, it's difficult to work on your own sobriety while you're trying to take care of and maintain and recreate these relationships.
Yeah. Yeah.
So the gift that I always like to tell people is focus on you, focus on your recovery.
Absolutely. Yep.
Because you're going to have outside things that are going to take place, just like in life. So in recovery, they're not always going to be the best.
Right.
And you know what? I look back now and I realize why I was turned down for the 22 jobs. I had a different path.
Right.
And
Exactly.
it's led me to where I'm at now. Right?
Exactly.
So tell me, if you could talk to somebody in the camera right now and share with them, just that it's okay to reach out for help, just what would be your message to somebody that's struggling?
Well, absolutely. And, reaching out, asking for help wherever you can get that. It's so important. It might be hard, but it's so worth it.
Yeah.
I've learned that.
It's one of
right
those
way.
things that's like, I can go like this. You just got to grab onto the hand and we'll guide you because
Right.
you got to want it.
Right.
You
Oh,
know,
yep.
You got to want it.
Definitely.
You can't force somebody to get recovery. So thank you so much to my guest, Janice Cook. Thank you, Maple Mountain Recovery and Living Recovery Interventions, our sponsors. Thank you again.
Thank you.
I appreciate it.
Yeah, you're welcome.
All right. Have a good day, guys.